Welcome to Your Schools on Community 7 Television. I'm Shoots Veis and I'm your host. Each month we look at a different aspect of what's going on in Billings Public Schools. And this month we're going to talk about some wee childs in the first grade. A couple of months ago we talked about kindergarten, and now we're moving up to first grade. And to do that, we have a couple teachers from Poly Drive Elementary. Tiffany Bell and Heather Blakesley are here to talk to us about first grade. Tiffany, Heather, thank you so much for being on.
Yes, thank you for having us.
All right, Tiffany, let's start with you. Did you grow up in the area? Did you come to the area? Are you from around here? Give us your backstory and how you got to be in Billings.
Okay, I grew up here in Billings, going to school around here, and then went to college to be a teacher, and have taught now for 12 years. I did kindergarten for 9. And then have done first grade now for 3.
And when did you know you wanted to be a teacher? That this is something that I really like it here at school, and I want to keep coming to school every day.
I come from a family of educators, and going into college, I was determined that I'm not going to be an educator. I'm going to try something different. And then I just did one of my practicum classes, and I loved working with the kids, and said that it was meant to be.
All right. How about you? Did you grow up in the area? Did you come here?
So I'm from Sydney, Montana.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in Sydney, and then I attended MSU Billings. That's what brought me here. And I, like Tiffany, I did not know I wanted to be a teacher either. I tried lots of different things in college. But I was tutoring some college students in math. And I just loved it. I loved teaching them and trying to figure out how they learn best. And so I gave it a shot and fell in love with it. So.
All right, very good. And how did you get recruited to come work for Billings Public Schools?
Well, I was placed in student teaching at Elder Grove School. And so I got a job out there my first few years. I took a couple years off to have some kids and got back out at Elder Grove. But I had a good friend that is a principal in the district, and she just encouraged me to apply, and I got hired and placed at Burlington was my first school. So.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
How did you end up coming to work for Billings Public Schools?
I also student taught in the Billings Public Schools, and then I had applied in other districts, but I did some subbing and guest teaching in other classrooms, and just applied and got the job in Billings Public Schools.
And what schools have you worked in?
I have done some long-term subs and subbing up at Eagle Cliffs and at Bitterroot and Miles, and then, but my full teaching has been at Poly right now.
Okay. Once you got your first job and you were doing that, what surprised you most about being a teacher?
I think just all of everything that it entails. It's not, you just don't show up to work and everything's done for you. You have to prepare everything, get it all ready, and clean up afterwards, and it's a fresh start the next day.
And what surprised you most about being a teacher?
You know, it's so much different than just showing up and hanging out and playing with kids. You know, there's so much more to it. And especially in first grade, it's like there is just so much that we're responsible for teaching these kids. And so that, I think, surprised me the most. And also just that your college, you know, it's like you learn all these things, but actually being in the classroom and, you know, being responsible for them, and classroom management is huge, you know, almost more than the academics behind it is your classroom management. So that, I think, was the biggest thing that surprised me.
What do you enjoy most about being a teacher?
Just, you know, I think the most important thing about being a teacher is your relationships with the students. They will learn best from you if they know that you love them and care for them. And so just knowing them on a personal level and trying to figure out what makes them learn the best, and just that, the kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy most about being a teacher?
Again, just the kids and being around them and their love for learning. Like, they enjoy learning all the time, whether they know they're learning or they're not learning, and just seeing the growth throughout the year and watching the pieces all come together that you've worked on.
Sure.
So.
Well, I know it's not all perfect out there. So, so what do you enjoy the least about being a teacher?
I would say just kind of just meeting those specific needs from one level to the next. It's hard to try and meet them in the middle and get what's done. And I'd have to say just the politic aspects of it and just how much it can impact our job, and we have no control over it.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about you? Same question.
Yeah, I think just, it's really hard because especially in the younger grades, their learning and grasping concepts is super developmental, and our timeline is not. It's, you have to have all of 21 of your 6 and 7-year-olds knowing this by this time. And that's just not how their brain works, And so I think that's really hard, the stress and the pressure of trying to get everyone to the same point at the same time when that's just not reality.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk specifically about first grade. When you start the school year, what do you do to assess and find out where your students are? Do you have a connection to their kindergarten teacher? And is there some history built up with that? And then on top of that, what do you do to say, okay, I know they were supposed to be here, but they're really not? So walk us through that process.
So we do, we look at test scores from the end of kindergarten. We are in close contact with kindergarten teachers. They write notes about where they are. And so then when they come into first grade, we assess them again through just our standardized testing, our fast testing, and that gives us kind of a glimpse into where they are and what they know. From there, we kind of differentiate, but it's super fluid because you're not sure, maybe they had a bad testing day, or maybe they didn't do anything over the summer, so they lost it, but then they pick it right back up, so just differentiating, but super fluid and flexible, and like Tiff said, just meeting them where they are, and so that's kind of where we start, just looking at the test scores, but then also just every day with them.
So Tiffany, how do you, I know I have my students, some are here, some are here, some are here. Do you plan out for a whole year, this is where I need to get student A, and this is where I need to get student B, and this is where I need to get student C? Do you look at that over the course of the year, or is it more kind of the next 2 months?
It's more in smaller increments just because there are so many skills that we are testing them on, that they might be really good at reading and then struggle in math, or vice versa. And they can, depending on the skill that you're working on, might just need a little extra work on that and then can move back up. So we do, like Heather said, with differentiating and having them in smaller groups, getting to know them a little bit better. And then once we know they have that skill, they might move to another group or move to a different group. So it's kind of, even a day-to-day basis, just depending on what you're working on.
Are there milestones, though, that you're trying to hit every month, every 2 months, something like that? And then how do you assess if you're hitting it? Is it, I know you do the testing, but I'm assuming you're not doing that every single day.
No, that's true.
But how do you, I've been teaching first grade for however many years. I know these guys need to be here, and they're not. And are you doing that kind of on a continual basis?
Yes, I'd say like our common assessments that we're doing as well. We have units that we do each time, kind of keeping them on base, but we also have like the daily work that we're checking in with them and observing a lot as well.
Okay.
And we do have, if a student is struggling, we progress monitor them, which is testing them on, a struggling skill that they have, and so we'll do that weekly. So then we really know if they're making progress or growing, or where specifically we can analyze those progress monitoring tests and see where they specifically need help. But especially with the younger, it is really, like Tiff said, like a day-to-day. We want them here by the end of the year, but obviously we are looking and assessing and analyzing almost daily.
Have either of you noticed the kindergarten, are they coming in, are they getting more done in kindergarten than they used to? I know you were a kindergarten teacher for a long time, and I'm sure you see the impacts of that in first grade. I know that's one of the things we talked about with kindergarten is they are getting more. Do you guys see that as well?
Yes, definitely. I'd say that kindergarten's not what it used to be, like going in and just playing and getting to know school. I mean, they are getting to know what school is, but they are still working on skills to lay that foundation for when they come to see us, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know we talked about a lot of kindergarten is learning to be at school. Do you guys still have to do a lot of this is how we do school?
Yes. I mean, it's an everyday classroom management thing. You know, it's constant practice and getting a routine in place, and it is very much.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a different classroom and different dynamics, and each teacher
sure.
kind of has different expectations. But in first grade, it's not as basic as when it is in kindergarten.
Sure. Heather, talk to us about how you do classroom management when you do know, okay, I have a third of my kids are reading where they're supposed to, if not above it. A third of them are pretty much where they are, and as long as I get them done. And then a third of them are, how do you deal with that as far as classroom management and dealing with a diverse set of students who some are already where you need them to be, some are on track, and some of them are not. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's super, I don't think people realize in first grade the gap that there is. I have parent volunteers that come in my room daily, and that is, they all comment on that, about how they cannot believe that there are kids still working on their letter sounds and then kids reading at a third grade level.
Right.
You know, it is so big. And so that is why it's just really important to differentiate. We do small groups that are really leveled. You know, I feel like as much as we can differentiate, we do. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of you do this, you do this, you do this, super intentional, purposeful work for each of those to meet them where they are and get them to where they need to be.
All right. Anything different that you do as far as that differentiation between what you have in your classroom?
Kind of the same, because we are doing the small groups as well. We've also kind of made it to where, like, if we have common kids within our grade level, we'll pull those ones so that we can get more intense with those ones needed and still meet all the needs of all the other students as well. And so I feel like that's helped a lot too, to focus on their individual skills during that time.
Do you find that if you're working on different subjects and those students are at different levels, then that classroom mix can be a little bit better versus, well, all the kids that are good in reading are good in math? Or, I mean, is that something you see, or are those groups more diverse? Some kids are better at math and not as good as reading, and thus there's a more mix of kids in small groups.
I feel like the small group part is great to individualize and meet the needs of those students, but then like when we're doing whole group, they're all at the same level and learning from each other. I mean, even though they're not reading at the same level, the low ones can still learn from the high level. And then the lowers can still teach those higher level ones thinking of things differently as well. So I feel like they still also learn from each other together.
Heather, what would you wish that parents knew about first grade that they don't seem to get?
I mean, I think just again that it's really developmental. I think sometimes parents will see like a low test score and, you know, kind of panic or think there's something wrong with my child. And, you know, they'll get it, they'll pick it up, and, you know, just because they're not at the point we want them at right now doesn't mean that they're a failure or, you know, I just think, you know, understanding that things will come when they're developmentally ready for it. And just that there's a lot that they need to learn in first grade. We have, you know, they need to be reading, they need to know adding, subtracting, time, money, writing. You know, it's like there's so much that we are covering in first grade. I think, just that.
Anything that you wish parents knew about first grade?
Well, and I just think that, like she said with the test, they're like 1 minute, they're just little snapshots that we're kind of giving them. And just understanding, like, it is intense, there is a lot going on, and how much of it is developmental, and academics is important, but, we also want them to be kind and helpful and teach those things too. So we have to find that good balance, I feel like.
So are there students that come to you that seem to do pretty well in kindergarten, but get to first grade and there's just a block there, and you can tell they're not going to be where their peers are going to be by the end of the year? What interventions can you take? And do you guys see that in first grade, or is that going to come later when they're in later grades?
Just some little things that I noticed, like we go from the basics of kindergarten of sounding out words, and then we get into the higher level thinking of all the rules and the phonics and that stuff, and then it tends to get a little confusing for them. So them finding that, like, not getting and putting those pieces together yet can kind of cause that block. We do have an interventionist that is great and comes in and pulls them for reading and math. We just really focus on just kind of narrowing down and making sure we're getting those basic skills down before we push them to start doing like double digits and stuff before.
Do you is it relatively easy to see those things, Heather, in some of your students that they really should be getting it, and we've worked hard on this, and they're just not, and I need some extra help here. Is it pretty easy to see those things?
I think over time it is. Obviously when we first see them, we'll be like, oh my gosh, they scored so low on our test, but then it's like once we get in the rhythm of school, they are able to, oh yeah, I remember, I know how to do that. But as we progress through first grade, and all the things that they need to learn, the gap does get bigger with those kids that struggle. And so it kind of is easy to see, like, okay, they're still not getting their letter sounds down, or, they're not able to blend the 3 letters together to make a word. I think it is, and especially teaching first grade, kindergarten, you can kind of pick it up on who are the kids that are going to struggle, and then you can get them the help. You can try some interventions. We have a great, like Tiff said, intervention teacher at our school, and just get them the extra help that they need.
Sure. How important is recess to your day and what you do in the course of your day?
It is. I mean, recess is everything to them.
Yes.
They always say recess is their favorite part of the day. They love it. And I think I'm just super big into letting the kids have some playtime and explore and just downtime, because like we've talked about, first grade is intense and there's a lot they need to learn, and they will learn better with some downtime. They will be able to sit and listen and take that in if they're able to have some playtime and some free time. And it's also super important to their social, emotional well-being too.
Sure.
So,
yeah. What do you notice about your students after they've come in from recess? Are they able to reset, or what does that take?
Again, in the beginning, a lot of practice, what it looks like when you come back in, but they're pretty good when we have them outside. Like, we try and get them to be quiet and coming in and hang up their stuff. With the snow and everything, it messes everything up a little bit.
Yeah.
But they're pretty good at, if you have a routine established, they're good about coming in and getting going. So.
All right. What technologies do you use in your classroom?
We have one-to-one iPads in our classroom, so we do use those on a daily basis, and I have an interactive projector as well. She does not have the interactive projector, but yeah.
And how is that? How are they able to help you in teaching first grade?
It's great for just reinforcing what we're already learning. So when we are doing those small groups, making sure we're intentional on what they are doing on their iPads, making sure it's for learning purposes. They're working on reading books that are at their level and doing that as well. So it just kind of helps reinforce and balance that out too.
All right. Any different technologies you use or other things you bring into the classroom that helps you with first grade?
Technology similar. Like, we have a great PTA at Poly Drive, and they've provided every student one-to-one devices. And our school has implemented ST Math. It's an app for the iPad, and it's super, we have found it to be super helpful with math skills with the kids. So yeah, just basically the iPads and different apps you can use to reinforce skills and
Sure.
yeah.
But you know, besides the reading and the math and the kind of the basics they're getting here, what other classes are they? Are they going to art class? Are they going to PE? What other classes do they have during the week?
So they have PE once a week. They have music once a week. They have library once a week, which we have an amazing librarian. She does a lot of technology with them. And then we also have our counselor comes in and does just a little counseling, social lesson with them every other week as well.
Sure. Do you find that they like one of those classes more than the others, or are they always excited to go to PE class? Or
They're really pretty excited to go to any of them, for sure, yes.
They're all
Yeah,
fun. They're
they
super.
do,
They're
yeah.
all we have some great specialist teachers, and they make it fun.
they're just happy to get out of the classroom?
They are, yes.
Yep.
Yep. Talk to us a little bit about what is redshirting, and what have you seen for good and maybe for not so good with students you've had who've started maybe a little bit later than their peers.
I'd say we haven't seen a lot of students that don't come in without kindergarten. We have a few that maybe have come from other schools, not necessarily from Billings Public Schools, but maybe from the Montessori. And I mean, nothing good or bad about them. It's just a little bit different coming into the classroom. Just learning how public school works a little bit, and then like those that maybe haven't had full-time kindergarten as well, just getting through what a full day looks like and everything. So it's kind of, the parents' choice and what they feel is best for their kids. And I know you had a good point about some of the social.
Yeah, just super. I think we both just believe like it's parental choice. They know their kid, well, the best, way better than we do, especially when they haven't started school yet. But just I think for parents to look at the social emotional aspect, not necessarily like it's our job to teach them the academics, and so just to really look at social skills, like can they sit and listen and take turns and stuff like that's going to be super beneficial to them. I waited with my son to start in kindergarten, and on the advice of his preschool teacher said, academically he's probably there, but socially, maturity wise, might benefit him from waiting. And it was a great decision for us, but again, I think it's super specific to each child and their needs. And
so how do you work with a student that maybe is academically quite ahead of where they are, but socially they are really struggling? What are some of the things that you do to work with those students?
I think just a lot of practice and a lot of, social skills lessons to help them, because we do see that quite a bit. I think, a lot of parents, I think they don't really realize how much that plays into their child's education. And so they'll really focus, on the academics and making sure their kid knows all of their letter sounds or can read by the time they come to kindergarten, which is amazing. But I don't think sometimes they realize how big of a role that plays. And so, it's up to us then to kind of practice, sitting and raising your hand and, all that good stuff.
Yes.
So,
Anything you've noticed along that spectrum, academically way advanced, socially we need some help?
I think, just some of those, focusing on some specific lessons too. We go through, and our counselor's a great support as well, just teaching them some different choices on things we can do. We've been working on, talk a lot about our feelings and how they're okay and how we should react with it. So we have a lot of things like in place to kind of help them visualize and work through that.
Sure. What do you expect your students to be able to do when they move on to second grade?
Really we want them to be able to count and being able to add and subtract, having those basics down first, with even just knowing some of those ways to make 10 and having some of those skills under their belt so that when they do go, that they know how to solve their problems. So just the different strategies for in math. And then even then for reading, just, really working on those sight words, being able to know some of the rules, that they can also use their strategies to figure out a tricky word when they get there.
Right.
So.
And when your students are moving on, do you go talk to who their second grade teacher is and say, for student A, here's where they're at. For student B, do you guys have those type of discussions with second grade teachers?
Yeah, a little bit, I guess we do. We have like transitional meetings from the kids that we're passing on to second grade, just giving a little bit of background knowledge. And then we also, provide them with all of their test scores, write a little bit about their behavior, or, some troubles that they have. And so then that teacher gets all of that information too. And we're so open with each other and, communicate well with each other. So. Yeah.
What do you send with your students that you hope that they do over the summer between first and second grade?
I think just any reading practice. It's first grade is such a huge transitional year with learning how to read, and then they need to now read to learn. And so it's like a transition from, I got to figure out how to decode this word, to I need to start thinking about what I'm reading and remembering it. So just practicing that transition, like, oh, you read this page, tell me about it, what happened. So just some reading, and then any practice with math facts, just adding and subtracting, is super beneficial for them as well. So.
Anything else that you send home that during that transition time between first and second?
Yeah, I kind of encourage them a little bit more to write as well, because again, that kind of, write about their experiences and telling the fun things that they did. Just continue on working on that handwriting and using complete sentences and giving some fun details and stuff. So.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, Tiffany, thank you so much for being on and talking to us about first grade. Everyone who's watching blesses you for working for working with the first graders, and we're all very happy that we don't have to. So thank you very much for all that you do, and I know your students love it too.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It was great. Thanks.